Hi, thanks for coming. I'm Joni Giddings from Sangle. This is for the commissioner candidates. You all have mentioned being pro-property rights. Some of you have said that property rights are limited only to not infringing on your neighbor's property rights. At least one of you has said that you'd use, quote, whatever means necessary, unquote, to rein in growth. So help us understand. If a property owner came to the county and requested a zone change because their property was improperly zoned, and they can show proof that their property falls under the description of a different zone, would you vote to uphold their private property rights and allow the change? If no, why not? And do any of you support plans to change the code to make it more difficult for a property owner to ask for a rezone?
Jeff Conley, District 2, and I deal with this weekly, so it's a tough question. It never gets any easier. We have property owners that, when you look at the comp plan and you look at our zoning ordinance, their property doesn't necessarily fit that. Do we need that to be upgraded? We do. We need the comp plan to be revisited. We need to be, using data from today instead of years and years ago. But still, the question was very specific, and I appreciate that actually, because those are the things that we have to look at. The definitions in our comp plan and the definitions in our zoning ordinance are the law as it sits today. Now that can be argued about what does that mean or what does that say, but at the end of the day, you have to make a decision based on the laws that are on the books, and you have to, every day you say, this does not result in the taking of private property. Every time we make a motion, Idaho is key to private property rights. We have to remember that I don't want to be overrun with developments or up zones or anything like that, but I do want to do what the comp plan and the zone ordinance say at this time.
Randy Flaherty, District 2. Part of my plan, which y'all can get a copy of. Thank you. I always think I'm talking too loud. It all starts with the comp plan. Ours is severely outdated. It's not being followed morally or legally by law, as everybody can see with their own eyes. Once we have a comp plan and that's updated and thoroughly checked, I plan on bringing the planning and zoning group back together as one, as it should be. They work together, not separately as a group. I think that's super important. A lot of you don't know that that just changed, that we now have a planning, we have a zoning commission. Why? What benefit does that take for the county and people? We're here to be good stewards of the property of the county and uphold your rights. And I think that's super important. We need to make sure that we have, when people are giving applications, turning in applications to planning and zoning for consideration, they're literally giving blank applications. And this is coming from people that are sitting on the boards for information, which you can go to them as well. Or they're partially filled out. Our planning office doesn't physically go out to the sites and look at them and address them and analyze what's really being asked. I think that needs to happen. We need to have planning and zoning specifically follow the planning process laws while creating development and everything that goes along with development at the time for doing so. And we need to have a time frame. People need to follow up, whether that's planning office or planning and zoning, need to follow through and make sure that that everything by law is being done correctly to protect your property rights.
So in 2008 was when our last comp plan was done. So we've had 4 years to update it. But in spite of not having it updated, we still have a current comp plan that is our guiding document. One of the things we see during planning and zoning in the commission is someone does come and they say, I'm in Ag 24s and I don't have those characteristics that are all around that map. And this is where having that updated map would be useful if we could get commissioners to push for that. So it doesn't mean that every single piece of property in that area are going to have all of those characteristics. That's a misapplication of the comp plan. And the way we get around that is by having the commissioners who are in office being willing to have that dialogue with property owners to explain that it doesn't mean that you necessarily on that spot have to have prime ag soil. It's the area of the map is what that's for, because the comp plan is the voice of the people of Bonner County. And so it's not a reasonable request to say you have to change it because I don't have prime ag soil. It's the area. And updating the comp plan isn't going to change that, because we never went to each individual piece of property to make sure it had all of the characteristics. What you're seeing is those prime ag areas, someone walks in and they say, we had that soil tested, it's not prime ag, and then they change that zone for that piece of property, and what looks like to a lot of people is spot zoning in that area. And then the concern is, then do we just come in and we start changing the area little by little over time, and then you end up with no more prime ag area. And that's where it requires the commissioners to understand how to implement the comp plan and stop making excuses for we need it to be updated, because we've had 4 years to update it. We have to use what we have. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it's a violation of someone's property rights, because the right to ask is what you have. It isn't an obligation for the commissioners to change that, because we have that for a reason. And there is a lot of poor documentation that took place in years past that have created some problems, but it doesn't make it any easier when we segregate planning from zoning, because we're segregating out that history and knowledge that those commissioners that volunteer have from the individual sections, and it makes it more difficult for citizens who have been actively involved in our planning, zoning, and rezoning from participating on that many days at the commissioners building.
Property rights are always a difficult one to speak on. We have a comp plan, we have laws, we know we need to follow those. Where it starts coming into question, I know where the commissioners have to make difficult decisions, are on the applications that come in that have been talked about, where a property owner comes in and wants to split it because it doesn't fit. One of the things after being here so long in this county is there are landowners that purchase property in Bonner County, large chunks, 20 years ago. They purchased under a comp plan that was in place at that time. They had long-term goals in mind. Say they bought 20 acres and at that time it was zoned where they could split it into 5s, and they did not go through and do that. But in the back of their mind they knew, someday I want to have property to hand down to my children. It's changed. Those areas have changed now to where they walk in now thinking, okay, I'm at a point in my life I need to make those changes, and they walk in now, it's nope. You can't do that. We are ag or forest 20. You don't fit into these other things. So they've had them changed all the way along. All those considerations have to be looked at. However, you have to refer back to the laws that are in place. At the point where there's two different sides on the laws, as a county commissioner and the board, they have to make a decision. There's 3 people, you make the decision, you go forward, putting the county at least a liability as you can. Because at some point, which we've seen, we've talked about, it's been in the newspapers, attorneys are going to get involved, and there's going to be lawsuits. I'm pretty sure everybody in here knows that there's been some thrown out there, and if you're online, if you're in Facebook, you see where they've all been talked about. They've been focused on where certain people are wrong. There comes a time where there is no right answer. You have to follow the law as best as you understand it. If that's not the way it's going to be interpreted or approached, then the landowner or their neighbor has to take it to the next step, and it has to go through the judicial process.
Private property rights are a big deal in this county and in this state, as they should be. My private property is mine, your private property is yours. In regards to your question, the idea that we're going to fix something that is wrong with the county commissioners by writing new rules and regulations because they aren't following the existing rules seems kind of silly to me as a Republican. Republicans don't fix laws or ordinances by writing more laws and ordinances. Private property rights within a zone, there's a couple of elements. One, as the landowner, I have rights. As a neighbor, you also have rights. But when we start looking at the comp plan, which is the aspirational view for the county, it's the people who come together. Just because I may have more money, which I don't, doesn't mean that my voice is louder. Spot zoning is not a way to make a comp plan or to make us be good neighbors. The current Board of County Commissioners has had 33 comprehensive plan amendments over the last 2 years. That is too many. This has created an environment where we have neighbors looking at neighbors and they are not working well together. We need to change that. We need to update our plan, update our ordinances, and then when people want to have something changed, we look at it and we say, no. You can always ask. My kids ask me for many things, and then I say, go ask your mother, because I'm a good parent. Sometimes the correct answer is no. I get that answer a lot.
So it's important to remember that our inalienable rights and our Constitution supersedes our feelings. We may not always like it, but that's the way it is. Once we start compromising on our inalienable rights and our Constitution, then we're going to go down another slippery slope. Commissioners, as well as all the other elected officials, we have to follow the law. So if the current law that's in place right now says that you've got X, Y, and Z to meet a 10-acre minimum, and you're encompassed in a 20-acre minimum, then by all rights, we have to listen to that and take a look at that by law. If we don't like it, we can change it. I can speak to this personally. A similar instance happened to us 4 or 5 years after we bought our place. We live on a creek. And about 4 years after we owned our house, FEMA sent us a nice little letter saying that we have to buy flood insurance at $1,000 a year. And I'm looking at this like this is a bunch of crap, because my side of the creek where my house is at is 10 feet higher than the other side of the bank. So that it's impossible that my house would ever flood. If we did, we'd all be underwater. So in order to get our house and our property out of the FEMA floodplain, we had to hire a surveyor, and we had to do an elevation survey, and it cost us $1,500, whatever it was. But we got ourselves taken out of the FEMA flood zone. Okay, so what they do is they look at the whole country, every place where there's a blue line or a circle, anywhere within 300 feet of that blue, you're automatically in the flood zone. The county did the same thing when they went and they did the zoning map. Okay, they circled large areas of land, and you can go down and take a look at it. And all they did was, okay, this area should be 20 minimums. This is closer to forest. This is 40-acre minimums. They circled and encompassed large areas. It's up to you guys if you would like to get yourself out of that big area and into a different zone, as long as your property meets those requirements as of today, by all rights. That's your right as the property owner. Thank you.
So I keep hearing comp plan and follow the law. The comp plan is not a law. It's a set of ideas. It's a plan, a basic general idea of how we think our county should grow. It is not law. We do have to follow the comp plan because that is the idea for the direction we want our county to go. I keep hearing we need to update the comp plan. I've read the comp plan, and it wants to keep Bonner County basically as it is now. I don't think that we need to go in and change the comp plan dramatically at this point. I think the issue here is the county commissioners have to make decisions based upon the comp plan and the existing law. But inside of both of those, there's a wide amount of latitude. I can use the Hoodoo Valley plan as an example lately. They wanted to go from down to, I think it was Ag 5s or 10s to 5s. And there was one little corner that had some other 5-acre parcels, and the other 330 degrees around it was all farmland. Well, some of the county commissioners said, well, it's touching these other little 5-acre parcels, so therefore it qualifies, and we should go ahead and subdivide that whole thing up. Other county commissioners disagreed, and they decided not to vote it out, or not to subdivide the land further. There's latitude here. What you need to make a decision on is which one of us is going to take the latitude on the side of the people and make those decisions that are going to be best for Bonner County as a rural community and as a conservative community. Thank you.
Dave Bowman, District 3. So the term private property rights gets bandied about a lot, and it gets misrepresented a lot. I'm all about property rights. I think there might be some people here that think otherwise. But to have, let's go to the code first, because if you say, it's Chapter 3 of Title 12 that has these zone descriptions in them. Chapter 2 of Title 12 is where lays out all the rules for how one would apply for a zone change or any amendment to the comp plan or to the code or to the zoning map, and how the governing bodies will evaluate such an application. Nowhere in that does it say you go to the zone description in Chapter 3 it said, and look at this description and say, well, my individual parcel here doesn't have a 30-degree slope on it, or doesn't have prime ag soils, or doesn't have this one feature. It doesn't say that, and that doesn't, and it is not, everyone has the right to apply for a zone change. It is not a right to just get it. It doesn't work like that. And for someone to come in and say, I want my property, it's not a menu from which you could come in and choose the property or the zone that you want. Allowing individual owners to just simply change their zone so that they can subdivide or do whatever, it defeats the entire purpose of having zoning in the first place. And you start to create this creep. And next thing you know, well, I was 10 acres or 20 and now it's 10. And then the next person says, well, they got their 10 and my property touches that, and on it goes. It defeats the entire purpose of having zoning, and it's not a right to change your zone. Thank you.